All those plans are underway for the former president. What else can we see happen over the week leading up to that state funeral? That's where we go live to our Joe St. George in Washington, D.C. Good morning, Joe.
Hey, good morning. You know, when everyone passes away, it's natural human inclination to grieve a little, maybe even to cry a little. And while those emotions are certainly present here, given President Carter's age, 100 years of age, his deteriorating health, he was in hospice for nearly 2 years, as you alluded to. I think there is perhaps a smidge less sadness here and more just celebration of a life well lived and a legacy that will forever be remembered. And now the country will pivot into multiple days of mourning. President Biden has established January 9th as the National Day of Mourning. The Associated Press reporting that a state funeral will take place on that day. So this will not just be 1 or 2 days. This will be an event that stretches well north of a week. And it's going to be one in which that stretches different parts of the country. There will be tributes in Plains, Georgia, his beloved Plains. Tributes in Atlanta, Georgia. Remember, he was governor of Georgia. And of course, here in our nation's capital, the expectation is that he will lie in state under the famous Rotunda Dome of the United States Capitol, the highest honor that Congress can give any American. And traditionally, memorial services are held at the National Cathedral in Northwest Washington, D.C. For millions of Americans, they don't remember the Carter one term in office. For millions of Americans, they weren't alive during the one term of Carter being in office. They remember his post-presidential life, working with Habitat for Humanity. He helped build homes nearly 10 years ago in Metro Denver. He is someone who worked to eradicate diseases in Africa and bring hostages, American hostages, home from overseas over the years. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in his post-presidential life, again redefining what it means to be a former president, the longest post-presidency in American history. People will debate his 4 years in the office, whether it was a good 4 years, a bad 4 years, and that debate is valid one. There was high inflation, crises with Iran, but there was also things like the Department of Education being created. Solar panels were put on the roof of the White House for the first time in the late 1970s when nobody was doing it under President Carter. So a lot to remember and celebrate over the course of the coming week plus.
And Joe, we can expect to hear a lot about Plains, Georgia in the coming days as well. We know the Carters had a really special relationship with that small Georgia town.
He taught Sunday school well into his 90s at the local church. The home that he built in 1961 with his own hands was the home they lived until they died. Modest, it was appraised at just north of $160,000 just a few years ago. In a time in which so many former presidents enrich themselves, right, become multimillionaires, he remained very humble. And now that home in Plains, Georgia, and that town of Plains will forever be intertwined with the Carter legacy. That home will be a national historical site and a museum that will be set up in future years to come. But Plains, Georgia, you know, a peanut farmer, humble means to rise to the office of the presidency and do so in a fashion, as President Biden said yesterday, of just being a decent man. It's certainly one of the more unique American stories. And again, something that this country will celebrate between now and the National Day of Mourning on January 9th.
Thank you, Joe St. George, live for us in D.C.